All right, so session 3 of Canva. We'll end up sharing some of the work you guys did in your videos, but I want to start out, recap a couple of sort of key points, and then talk about sharing, not just in terms of sharing with me, but in how you would share things with students if you wanted to give them templates of your own, and then how you might share assignments with them and how they might share back with you. Canva is improving regularly. Their sharing things are pretty good, especially considering we're all in the same domain, but it's not quite as seamless as Google. One of the things I think that you guys probably saw with, and I know some of you did definitely notice with the videos, it's just a little bit weird when you make these videos, like where do they go? How do you share them? Things like that. So there's sort of like, there's some nuances to Canva that there's, it's just a matter of just knowing that there's a slight different way of thinking. So what I'm gonna do first is just do kind of a quick review of some key elements of Canva, where some really key features are, sort of how you're gonna be starting things, making sure everyone remembers where certain buttons are, things of that nature. So I'm in Canva right now. I've got my scarsdaleschools.org team. That's super important because that's gonna give us that, super pro premium access. If I'm at the home screen, I see all the different possibilities, but I was just a second ago in projects where I can actually make folders. And one folder I've been doing is my STI 6010 folder. So much like Google, you can actually organize different projects you have into folders, whether it be for class or for unit or for lesson or for whatever it might be, right? So you can keep yourselves organized. The short version of sharing, just in terms of if you're working on this with colleagues, you can, for any of these things, you click the little head, just kind of like Google, and you can add a person, right? You can add a colleague, you can make them an editor, a viewer, things like that. This is not exactly how it's going to be shared with students or with me, but that's sort of the simple sharing if you want to sort of collaborate on these things with people. When you click something to open it up, it opens in a new tab, right? So I click a video, my video is there, that's the STI demo, things like that. They always open up in a new tab. Much like Google, if you're in a folder and you click the add new and you click a design, it will add it directly into this folder. If you're just at all projects and you click add new or create a design, it's just going to make it in your all project space, kind of much like just open in Drive, and then you'll have to actually move it to the proper folder that you want. Real quick, I'll just create another one just to remind you of how to move things. So remember, a doc will actually be a document, so it'll be text-based. When we first started this, some people did a doc by accident, and then they had trouble moving photos around because the photos aren't free-form in a document. So this is a doc, much like just typing. I like to do custom size. So for me, even if I'm doing a poster, an infographic, whatever, if I intend to print this out on paper for a bulletin board, for an assignment, for a portfolio, whatever it may be, I'll always just make it 8.5 by 11. And instead of px or pixels, I always want to go to inches first, 8.5 by 11. Because if I don't, if I leave it as pixels, it'll be much smaller than that. And then you'll run into really weird quirks with like font size 12 would be massive. I'm going to ignore these two because if I do a resume, that's basically a doc. It's just going to give me kind of different templates. So when I create this design, apparently it's an untitled design. It's giving me generic templates. Had I said resume, there would be like resume templates here. But if you did want to use templates, you can also always flip through the various templates. You could search templates if you wanted to be a resume. You could definitely do that. Untitled design up here in the top right just tells me what size it is. It would say, infographic. If I use that, it would say presentation. Click in it, give it a name. And it's a blank palette. It's got a name. If I wanted to move it somewhere, I go File, Save to Folder. And you'll notice right here, it just tells me that it's just basically in my projects. But once I go Save to Folder, I can click a folder. I can create a new folder. I'll save it here. Then what it does is right under the file name, it actually now tells me where it is. It actually tells me that it's in that folder, in addition to showing me that. So those are some cool little nuances, right? Now, in terms of putting anything in, let's say we just put in text and I add a heading. And then I'm going to go to an elements and I'm going to put in, I don't know, we'll put in this bear. Now, everyone talks about AI, artificial intelligence, and things like that. Now, AI isn't always something you interact with. Oftentimes, it's just doing things to help you. One of those sort of AI style elements of Canva is that it will never cover text with a picture. It'll automatically recognize that, like, if you have writing on there, you want it to be seen, so it'll default bring it to the top. Now, if you did want, for some reason, collage style, you wanted some words behind, no problem. Click position and then layers. And then this is where, if we did want to, we could force it to put the picture in front. But one of sort of machine learning AI type components of Canva is that it will default to always putting text and leaving text at the top, never having it being blocked by another element. And so that's really useful. You can group elements together if you wanted to, just by either doing command click or shift click. And then when you select both, you click group. Now it's one object. And now if I resize it, it'll resize both the image and the text together as a single object, which is really nice. And if you wanted them ungrouped, you just click on it, you click on group. Now they're still both selected, so you just kind of click off, then grab one of the elements, pick it up, move it. Then now you can resize them independently. This particular graphic has a number of different colors that you can change. So if you wanted the ears to be red or the outline to be red, and each one will have different pieces that can be changed. Let's go blue. All right, so that little bit of blue is really just on the inside of the head. So that's nice. Now with those elements, some of those elements are graphics, which have anywhere from 1 color to 5 or 6. I don't know if I've ever seen more than 6 colors on an element. Some of these things might just be pictures. So even though this looks like a graphic, it's actually essentially a photo, and it actually says edit photo. You can't actually change the colors on this. You can do some things to it, like you can edit this photo. You can have some options. So like background remover, that's one of those sort of AI tools where you can actually remove the background. So if I were to click on that, there's really nothing to remove, right? Can't do anything. Magic eraser is where you can take this and you can kind of hollow out a portion. And then, gotta move you guys. Let's see, oops. And I'll move it. I'll do that again. Hold on a second. Then drop the faces. So when you edit the photo here, I'll actually take a better photo. You can upload photos, and we've got them uploaded. So if I take, let's find one. So like this garden one I've used a couple of times. So when we edit this photo, background remover will automatically try to remove the background. Obviously, if there's a lot of stuff going on in the background, it can't discern what's background, what's foreground. If you have things that are solid backgrounds behind, that's going to be easier to remove the backgrounds. It is an in-progress tool, meaning it's not sharp enough or smart enough yet to let you sort of select like a person and have it remove a person. Now you can try certain things like the magic eraser. So let me make this a little bit bigger. We'll zoom in, get the heading out of the way. And you edit the photo. We can do the magic eraser. And we'll do that. Takes a second to load. And then this would be where there's a load. And it's was talked about in the first video. You could always go back to it. I could type in hot air balloons or something like that, and it'll actually then replace that section of the photo with whatever it is I searched for. So sometimes it works smoother than others. These are sort of beta products that are kind of in progress. The magic edit as well will let you replace things. So these are sort of some of those AI tools that they have, but you can tell that they are, this one even says beta. The magic eraser is kind of, as you can see, it's not working great. Magic edit. This is where we can take this and we'll say ship. Oops. And it'll give me some options for a ship in there. So these are kind of those AI tools that are good to have, may not necessarily be exactly as intelligent or as good as what you might get somewhere else, or it's not necessarily great at removing somebody. Maybe it takes a little while, but that's there. For the sake of time, I'm just going to jump out of that. You can also do things like the different filters, which are, much like Instagram, where they're putting on, different tones, highlights, things of that nature. You can tweak the intensity of any of those filters. You can put on different effects where you say drop shadow. Now, what the drop shadow is going to do is that's not on the photo itself per se, but it's like on the border of the photo. If you notice, what it did is it keeps the element still that size, that rectangle size, but it's giving you that sort of element behind the image. And that's what that is. And then you have all these different choices and colors and angles and things of that nature. And there's a whole bunch of different ones you can play around with. Duotone, you can say, all right, I want it to look fuchsia based. You can even change what you want the highlights and the shadows to be. So huge rabbit holes that you can go down to manipulate your photos. Then one of the other big elements we talked about the last couple of weeks is down here, you have apps. And if you click on apps, you have access to some different things. So for instance, this is where we talked about how you can make a QR code and generate a QR code that goes directly on your palette or your canvas. The only downside is that QR code will work to scan, but you cannot add it. You cannot make it a clickable link. We talked about that last week. So what I do is I'll use something like the QR code generator.com to make my QR codes separately, download as an image, add that image. That way they will be scannable. And I can also turn that image into a link just by clicking on any image and going to link. So I went to those three dots, I click link. So if I did this to, let's say just the New York Times, what would happen is now if somebody with a PDF, if I give this out as a PDF and they click on this picture, it would launch the New York Times. So this QR code generator is nice, but you can't make it clickable as well as scannable. But there are other apps in here you can play around with, making backgrounds, things of that nature. One of the things we'll talk about at the very end, which we haven't talked about yet, is the bulk create, which is really nice for creating things like certificates for your class. The other thing that came into play was under the share button. We can download PNG as an image. You can make that PNG have a transparent background. So if you're going to add this to something else, essentially any white space on there would become transparent and see-through. So if you put that in, you'd be into like a Google slideshow, you'd be able to see what was behind it. JPEG, just whatever's white is going to be white. PDF to print it out or to email it. And if you have links in there that are clickable, you would do a PDF because you can't click on links on a JPEG or a PNG file. You'd have to click on them on a PDF. PDF standard is just a little bit of a smaller file format. PDF for printing is just a little bit of a larger file format, just a bigger size, just to make it look a little bit better when you print it out. If you do have something that has a little bit of animation in it, you might do that as a GIF. We were talking about you can even make something into a small movie. And then it'll download. Now, there's also this 3 buttons for more. This came into play when we were talking about the videos. So right here, you notice that it says present, right? But if you look right above it, you got present and record. That's where you can essentially create a video out of this, where you can create a movie. Now, where does that movie go? Well, when you look at this in your in your projects thing, in your files, in your list of device, things you've created, it still shows the timings, but it doesn't actually, if you hit play or if you hit this preview button, you won't actually hear your voiceover. So it's a little bit weird. Your voiceover is still there. If you go back to share, and if you go to those three dots and you go to present and record, it'll actually be right here. So what you can do then is twofold. You can either copy this link and share it. That's going to share it to the video with the recording. You can download a movie file for putting into, a website, to putting on YouTube, for doing it like that. Or you can delete the recording. It won't delete the visuals of the video. It'll just delete the recording. And then you could always do present and record again and re-record. But it's a little bit weird that their finished video product file doesn't live in your projects. It lives under present and record. I don't know why it lives in there, but it does. So again, you can either send someone this link or you can download the file and then give it out. Now, in terms of downloading and sharing, we're going to loop back to that and then talk more about that in terms of giving it to students, as well as giving it to me for the purpose of this class. So you can go into your folders and you could invite people. You can invite me and you can share it with me. Now, if you're inviting people who may not know the nuances of this, they're going to open up that video and they're not going to see a video. They're just going to see your different slides, right? They're not going to know necessarily. You have to give them directions for where to go. So in terms of sharing a folder and giving somebody access to a whole folder, might be for purpose, right? You're collaborating with somebody, you're working with a department, you want to put stuff in there. You share it this way because then everyone's working on the same types of files, same types of artifacts. For something along the lines of finishing these pieces and giving access to others to view the finished product, not necessarily work on the product, I still think, because Canva has some of these weird things where the video is not really in there, it's kind of hidden, I still think your best bet is to just click those three dots, download, right? And when you're even here, you get the same options as I just showed you when you're actually in the file. That's for any one of these. For the video, you just, again, would come back over here to the video, share, present, record, download. Then toss them into Drive. Just upload them and put them into Google Drive. And I think that's the best way for you to share your projects. For me, for this STI class, it's also, I think, the best way for you to get your files out of Canva for the purposes of putting onto your website, for putting onto your YouTube channel, for giving to students as view-only type things. Now, if you want to share something with students in terms of having them use it, maybe use it as a template, you got a few options. You can click share. You can give it out as an assignment. And if you give it an assignment, you can select how you want to give it out. Now, different organizations, different people have different things, right? Different people use different things. So the learning management system is, you can link, if you're connected to certain learning management systems, like we use Schoology at the middle school, it would show up here. As Scarsdale, we have not connected to it because I do not know, honestly, how well Canva connects to Schoology at the moment, but that's kind of like a September investigation. And for you middle school folks, that'd be the type of thing where you can kind of give a little nudge to the middle school tech folks to kind of nudge IT to say, hey, is it possible to get it connected? Because then you could actually push it out directly to Schoology. If you're somebody that uses Google Classroom, you can push it out to Google Classroom, and it would be like any activity, any assignment in Google Classroom. You could also just push it out via Canva. And New Design for Each Student is essentially saying it would give you this, what I've created here with this image, with that image. It would give them that, but it would give them their own copy of it. Not everyone shared on one. It would give them their own copy. You can also, sort of read that, right? It tells you what's there. You can then give them notes, right? So like, change this. And then you can also say, share it back to me. When you're done, download it as a PNG file, put it in Drive, something like that. Click next, select students or groups. So now you can sit in here and type your individual students. Your personal contact groups that you may have won't work. Elementary school, if you put in a Hapara group, I've had that work sometimes and not others. So what I'll do is I'll show you how to create groups inside of Canva. Now, Trisha asked about would it show up with their email? Depends on the grade level, because elementary has email, but they don't get email from the outside. Middle school has email, gets email from the outside. I don't know how much they check it. Same thing with high school. Where it shows up is when they log into Canva, this little bell right here, there'll be a notification that tells them that they have an assignment pending and that they have something to do. That's where, regardless of how you share it, there should be a notification in this bell. So what we did was, when we started this with 5th grade this year, is we just sort of got them in the habit of every time they open up Canva to check the bell notification. Once they see it and start the assignment, then that version would show up in all projects for them on their own. Then you would sort of set the expectations of how long they have to do it, when they have to share it back to you. Are they sharing it back via Canva? In which case you would get an email and you would get the bell notification. If you want them just to do it, finish it, maybe you have a shared folder and drive you want them to upload it to, you would do that. Now, in terms of that group, back down here on the bottom left, you can create a group. So you can give the group a name, STI 6010. You can then give this out to people, right? Anyone from your school. You can give them a share link. You can write via email. Then when you go into that folder, so this would be the type of thing where if you have that link, you can take that link, and as a teacher, we have the ability to email students. You can do it. Then things will appear in that folder. You can also create designs in that folder automatically that will then have, maybe as like the mentor text, right? And then you can change the sharing option on it. So there are a few ways to do it. Now, what I recommend is with any of these sharing things, and we had this the start of last year, is try out a simple project with the students and figure out, you may even say to them, listen, I'm going to show you this. We're going to do a couple of quick things. I'm going to share with you. Let's see what the workflow is like. Because sometimes you don't really know how the workflow is going to be until you do it. So that's what I did with my 5th grade class the first time we shared. Had never shared with them, had never created a group with them. So we sort of went through and kind of I was honest with them and said, look, we're going to get a little messy. I'm going to give this to you. Give me a second, right? All right, I sent it, refresh. Where is it? Oh, it's in the bell. Play around with that workflow. And it may just take one class session to kind of, if you have your template, your project, your assignment, everything's already created, you sort of show it to me like, all right, we're gonna take a few minutes and just make sure everyone can get it. Did everyone see it? Okay. And you can kind of walk them through what it's going to look like, where they're going to find it, and then you decide how you want to give them back. If you're using Google Classroom, then that's sort of easy peasy because it goes right back into Google Classroom. If you're just going to have it in Canva, they may share it back to you. If it's in that group folder, that may be fine. And again, it's going to depend sort of elementary, middle, high school. Elementary school, you may be only dealing with 20 students. High school, you may be dealing with 200. So you may have to sort of play around with what works best for you based on the size of your student population. So that's sort of the quick review crash course on what we have done up to this point. Any questions based on any of that? Everyone's good?
Chris, I have a question. When I was making the video for the homework, and I downloaded it, and when I looked at the download, somehow the format of it was like the words were mixed in, like overlapped. And it looked fine when I look at it in the Canva. It's just when I download it, and I'm not sure, I had transitions, and I'm not sure it's because of my transitions it happened, or I don't know what exactly happened.
I don't know, but we can take a look at that today. That's one of those things we can, we'll take a look at when we go to share and whatnot. One thing I will also say is that I know the sharing aspect we may have gone through pretty quick, but let me share this with you real fast. I have been able to upload things to YouTube on the rural DSL. So session 1 and session 2 are up, and there's also, I made another video just very specifically about sharing and how to turn all this stuff into the for the end of the course. So that's a resource that you can always go back to. So if there's any of the things that we kind of covered so far, I'm still working on sort of a session 2 review, but session 2 is a lot more just sort of sharing and sort of brainstorming and bouncing ideas off of each other. But at least now this playlist on YouTube has the full session 1 and 2, the review, that indie work, plus also sort of an overview of how to share it with, especially with an eye towards giving it to me. But again, any of these things you could then turnkey back to the kids in terms of what works best for your workflow. Make sense? Everyone good so far? Any questions? All right. Well, so let's do this then. Let's tackle the first issue, which is Elizaveta. Why don't you share and show us? Let me see your let's see your Canva thing first, just the slides. So we'll take a look at those, and then we'll take a look at the recording on Canva, and then we'll take a look at it at how it downloaded.
All right. Okay. So, well, it was, I'm sorry, it was not perfect, but
that's okay.
So this is the video. Let me see if I can play it in Canva.
Yeah.
No, right? Can you see it?
Yep, we're seeing it. Yep.
But you cannot hear because I also recorded my voice.
So this is the quirky thing about Canva. When you preview it here, you don't see your voice. The timings are the same, or the timings are there as if your voice is there. If you wanted to see it with the voice, this is where it's kind of a weird thing about Canva. So go to share, go down, scroll down, and then you see more. Now click present and record. So see, but it's there. Now that's, I don't know why they like hide the final product there. It's because it's the link. So if you wanted to watch it like on your computer without downloading it, you would basically click copy to copy that link, and then open up a new tab and paste. And again, I'm not sure why it hides it in this link. It doesn't give you like a fixed piece.
So, should I play it?
Yeah, play it.
Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue à la classe de français 2023-2024. Moi, je m'appelle Madame Tokolskaya et je suis votre professeure de français cette année. Mes amis, les objets de la classe. The class supplies for this year that you will need. You will need un classeur, une trousse avec un crayon, un stylo et des crayons de couleur, et bien sûr, le cahier. What are we learning this year? Mes amis, this year we are going to learn 8 different chapters or 8 different units. We will start with chapitre préliminaire, where we're going to review everything you've learned in 6th grade.
Yeah, you can pause it.
I mean, it's it seems fine, but I'm going to show you how to download it.
Yeah, totally.
So again, and I'll just fast forward to the part where it's not okay.
So yep, so this is a quick time.
For this year, learning this year.
Okay, what are we learning this year? Okay, so that's weird. Let's go back to your working version of this. Yep, that tab.
Just move things around.
Yep.
Okay. So here I am.
So what are we learning this year? So it looks, let's click on like chapter, the headline, the chapter preliminary.
Okay, so I don't know. I suspect is the transition. I don't know, but I'm not sure what happened. So
yeah, because those are all separate. and it looks fine in the final. I don't know, that'd be one of those weird things where maybe what we should do is share that, if you could, if you want, share that file with me as like making me an editor. So this would be a good sort of work through for everyone can see too. So like if you're going to have a collaborator on this, so you would click the share button, and instead of downloading, you would just add people, right? So you would type in CCASAL, and as you type, just like in Google, this is going to AS. Yep. AS, yeah. So it'll actually show up, right? So when you click my name, then you'll notice now in this situation, I would say leave me as editor so I can actually have access to like help you out. But you could also just make somebody a viewer, you can make somebody a commenter, and just like Google, you could always go to that little pencil and you can actually change the sharing access while they're in there. And I just got the email that you shared it with me.
Okay.
Now, as a slight aside, if you want to stop sharing,
Right. One
because
second.
then, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I found it.
Because then this is good just for other folks to see. So what I'll do is I will then show you where it lives for me and how I get sort of these notifications of what it looks like. So let me share my screen. So now I'm back at just my sort of generic dashboard. You see that on the little bell, I have the notification that has one thing has been shared with me. So that's essentially if you were to create a group, let's say in Canva, and share it via Canva to your students, share it with the whole group, every student in the group would have that little bell right there, and then you would have this access to this project. In terms of where this lives for real, excuse me, if you go into projects, you have all projects. You have various drop downs like owner, right? You can select a very specific owner if, let's say, you share a lot of things with sort of very specific people, or you can go to shared with you, and then you can take a look at the different things that have been shared with me, right? So it's right there along with all these other things. So that's where you can actually take a look at these. And then just like anything, if I tap on this and open it up, I'm going to get this preview. Now it can't load a preview of the video. It's trying to. This is probably my internet connection more than anything else, but I can either make a copy of it if she was saying, hey, here's this thing, or I can actually click edit, and this opens up the exact same one that she's working in, which is, you can actually see up here, it's her little sort of avatar and my little avatar. So in this way, it actually functions very similar to a Google Doc file. We're working on the same file. So any changes that I would make, she would actually see in real time, which is kind of nice. So we'll sort of dive into, we'll go back into that. Well, I'll poke around in that and try to figure out why that's happening in a little bit, like when we do some independent work. Is everyone good with the sharing? Does everyone have a sense of how they're, who is that? Trisha.
So can you track changes like you can in Google? Like if one kid goes in and messes with the other's account, like the project,
It's not as good. Like I would really recommend starting out by, like, if you share, let's say a blank template that you want them to fill in, every student gets their own, and just let them just a one-to-one situation, right? It's great. It's not as smooth as Google. It's not as necessarily like robust in a tracking standpoint as Google. We're not different than the students. It's not like we're teachers and they're students and they have restricted access. Like we all have equal sort of access, unless you're like the owner and they're just a commenter. I would start super small and just be like, every one of you is working alone. See how that goes. Then depending on how that goes, depending on what the next project is, then you might work in like just pairs. See how that functions, because a lot of this is sort of, it's hard and fast in the sense that we know it can be done, but until we really experience it in the real world with like a class of 25 kids all cranking on it, like it's hard to really say how smooth or clunky it's going to be. And this is actually smoother than it was back in September when we shared with them, because there used to be a little classwork button, like menu on the left, and you would share it with them. And for some kids, it would show up in classwork. For others, it didn't. For like one class, it did. For one class, it didn't. So we were like, you know what? No, go with the little bell. You're going to see it. I just like that just turned out to be the easier way to do it. That create a group thing used to be super hidden. They had it like under the settings. Now it's right there. So they're constantly improving. So I would just sort of slow roll it and see how it functions in the real world in your environment.
Thank you.
Yeah. What else? Everyone good? All right. Now, what I want to also show before we dip into a little bit more sharing so we can do some more troubleshooting is some of the other little things that sort of pop up and in terms of searching for things, because like anything, it's, whoops, wrong button. We are a little spoiled by Google. A little spoiled by Google. We're a little bit spoiled about how good Google is at searching, right? Because that's what Google does. So sometimes we expect search bars to be a little bit more intuitive than they are, return better results, right? So this says up here, you could search your content or Canvas. So if I do like capstone, that's kind of easy because I've named all of my stuff capstone, right? Now, it's basically searching by title. All right, so if I do this, it's getting a little bit smarter, but it's got Christine Boyer in there, right? Because I made her, retirement party flyer here. It's searching inside of some of the documents. It's trying to do a little bit of like a sort of a Google search where like Google doesn't just search for the name of the documents. It also searches like the content of the documents. It does a good job, but it's not necessarily like in theory, it should be returning all the capstone ones because my name is in all the capstone ones. And it kind of is because what this does that Google really doesn't, Google kind of gives you those massive pages and kind of the never ending scroll. Canva will limit it to sort of what it thinks are like the top 10 with a show more button. So you can always click show more and it will load more. So that throws people off sometimes because sometimes you, depending on what size screen you're looking at, you might not see that show more button. You might have to scroll down a little bit. And if it's not there, people go, oh, they only gave me like 8 results. It's like, no, there's more. You just got to kind of show more. So it handles searching of your content a little bit different. But it does have, like we showed with sharing, similar features to Drive where you can actually sort by who owns it, the type of file it is, right? Whether it's an image, a folder, things like that. Different categories if you used one of their categories, date modified. So it does have the ability to do that, which matters a little bit less now if we're all just starting out with this. We only have a few, but I mean, I have a few hundred designs and things that I've either created myself or collaborated with. So this becomes a lot more helpful in terms of finding the content. Now, that's just searching your files or sort of their templates. You can also do things just like, let's use resume as an example. So, excuse me. So there's no results for resume because it's just searching my content. But if we search for Canva templates, so even though that thing says it's going to search Canva or your thing, I start searching for my stuff. That's a little bit of that AI kind of concept where like it's going, oh, you're just searching your content. So I'm just going to only keep searching your content until you kind of tell it, no, all right, I want to search your content, like Canva's content now. Because even though the search term is still the same, since we told it to look for Canva templates with that result, now we see a whole bunch of different results, right? So this would work for anything. So similar, like you can even do video. And you can see all these different videos. You kind of mouse over them, you can sort of see what they do. A couple of different slides. The 3-dot menu, star is sort of favorite. So you're kind of going through trying to figure some things out. You can customize this template. Preview this template is nice because what this does is it doesn't open a new tab. And I know a lot of us have the problem that I do, where it's like I have 10,000 tabs open because I forget that I keep opening new tabs. So this allows me to kind of see what it would look like. So then you would be replacing the text, you would be replacing the image or the GIF behind it, but you would essentially be working within this design. You then obviously can, depending on your image, you can move things around. So as a quick example, let's say I wanted to customize this template. I click customize, then it opens up in the new tab because now it's actually mine. And it's just called whatever it's called, right? In this case, video in pastel, yellow, and black. If I go to file, you'll notice it's just a video in my generic projects. It automatically adds it to my projects. If I wanted to save it to a folder to make sure I kept it with the STI, then, you know, STI 6010, save. Now it's actually telling me that it's in there. So now if I want to tweak this, obviously I just come in here and I just double click, I just change the stuff, you know. There's that. I can change the video that's back there, right? So where do we get these videos? Now you can upload your own content, right? You can upload whatever you want. You can connect Drive if you would like. This is where it kind of gets granular, where like it's just going to show me images right now. I haven't uploaded a ton of video. I've uploaded a couple of things, but there's videos. If I had uploaded audio, let's say I recorded myself just doing like an audio only podcast or something, you can do it. It will then set these apart and leave them there so you can actually fix them. So if I wanted to replace that video, let's replace it with this one. Right. So there's that. So I could come over here. I can delete this video. I can then replace mine. And if I wanted to sort of stretch it out, but then when it stretches it, it crops it because it's not going to like mess with it. But then if I double click on these things, so when you resize any of these things, photos, videos, we resize them, it's not going to stretch them or squish them. Like Google will stretch or squish a picture. It always enlarges it in proper ratio. But then you can double click on it and then you can actually reposition it to where it's going to live in that frame on your slide. Now with this, I can decide that maybe I want this to be over here. And you'll notice that this, because it's a template, has effects already selected. So you can click on that and it's going to show you what it's already got. It's got this lift, right? That's the style. So when you're using templates, whether it be video, you know, graphic template, infographic, whenever you click on things, you sort of have to like look at what they have. You can kind of see what the animation is and how it comes in. They've selected typewriter. And I know that because this is the one, if you look at all of them, they're all kind of these just generic sort of thin borders. A, it says typewriter, but then B, this has the solid sort of gray across it. Now this picture or the video, whatever you replace that with, similar to the rise, that's the animation that they used. So it says rise, and those 3 little circles, 4 little circles, letting you know that's animation. So then you can choose the type of animation you want, just like in PowerPoint, Keynote, Google. You want it to, when it shows up, when it leaves, you know, which direction are you animating, things like that. So a lot of the animation tools are exactly the same in terms of how they function. It's just they are in slightly different places. But then whenever you use these, you just have to go through kind of slide by slide, clicking on each element and looking at the different effects it has, looking at the different animations it has, clicking on each element because each element will be animated differently than the other elements. And if you don't have videos, you can actually, when you come into uploads, you can actually record yourself. So if there was something we wanted to do, you could actually click record yourself, right? And you can go through, you can actually see this is a live shot of me right there. It's letting you know where to change your settings, if you want a different microphone, a different camera, because sometimes some people have like an external, like maybe you're working in a multi-monitor setup and you have like an external webcam and you want to actually choose the external webcam instead of like the built-in camera on your device. Maybe you're using a better microphone, like you have one of those like, Blue Yeti microphones or something like that. You can change those settings. But so now you can record and sort of put your head right over that slide. Exit out. A lot of this is going to be sort of playing around with it. What I have found, and again, I'm somebody who, even though I love this stuff, I can kind of sometimes be overwhelmed with the amount of elements, is I will generally in these situations make my visuals all how I want them. And then the only video that I record is during that share, more, present, and record. And then that way I can kind of talk through it how I want to talk through it and not have to worry about kind of mixing each head separately. But you could do that if you wanted to. You kind of really have to play around with this. And I know a lot of you guys have sort of sent me emails like, oh, it's not that great. I don't care. Like whatever you guys are making in this class, I don't care if it's great, if it's horrible, if it's amazing. I don't care. What I care about is that you're kind of going down these rabbit holes and figuring out what's tricky and figuring out like what works for you, because how these things play for one person is gonna be different for another, right? Some people are gonna be like, this is too overwhelming, and that's fine. That's part of the purpose of this course, is to sort of see what works for you and what doesn't. Like I said, I actually tend to gravitate towards Adobe Creative Cloud for video because it's less than this. It doesn't do as much, but it's a lot faster because there's less I have to think about. It's kind of like image, text, record. That's it. Like there's not a lot of customization. I like that because then I can do a super fast kind of flipbook style video. This obviously gives you a lot more functionality, but it might be overwhelming. And then related to that, when you come to things like elements, you can search elements similar in how you're searching these other things, right? So meaning if I wanted, paper, it's going to show me these results. Now it will sort of say, all right, we know it knows, sort of the AI kind of knows that, well, do you want lined paper, ripped paper? Like, all right, I want ripped paper. Now it's going to kind of give me a bit of a more filtered search. Do I want ripped newspaper? All right, it's going to give me different things. So you can start to kind of like filter your searches by this. All right, I want just graphics of ripped newspaper. Now it's going to give me smaller results. I want just photos of ripped newspaper. So these are photos of real ripped newspaper. I want photos of old newspaper.
Chris, what's the difference between graphics and photos?
So graphics are the ones that tend to have, and that's a great question. Graphics are these things where you can actually change elements, change colors of part of it.
Colors, okay.
Yeah, and then photos are like this iPad one is it's not a photo, it's an illustration, but it gets treated like a photo in that it'll literally say edit photo. You can't change like the color of the bezel or anything. You can just kind of do your standard, like, put a filter on it, but you're really just putting a filter on black in this case, right? So here, let me grab a better version. So if I did, let's do this. We'll do the paper example. So if I do paper and I take this paper, it's literally like a piece of paper, right? And if I go to edit this photo, I can, put on different filters, right? I can do things like that. I can basically treat it just like a picture of a person. I could put some shadows on it, things like that. I can blur it out if I wanted to. I could do this weird sort of, I can make it blue paper. I can make it cherry paper. Essentially the same thing I would do to a selfie photo of myself, I can do. When I look at, we'll come back to elements and we'll do paper. But for this one, we'll take a graphic. When I put this graphic on, this graphic gives me two choices, right? I have two ways to change color. I'm just going to delete my little bear guy for a second. So it essentially gives me like a dark sort of edge, right? So if I change that, that's kind of like your highlights of it. And if I did this, then I can make that be green, right? So green paper with kind of black highlights. So that's the difference between a graphic and an image. Illustration is a photo, is an image. They kind of get all treated the same way. the graphics will give you the ability to manipulate aspects of it. So like, here's probably a better example because this one has the tape on the ends, right? Oh, but that's actually an image. So I can't, if that was a graphic, then I would be able to actually change the color of that. Let's see if this is really a graphic. Nope. I know it says graphic over there, but it's not really a graphic. I don't know why it's doing that, because in theory, the graphic should actually give you those different colors. So let's come back here to paper. Let's just go to graphics and let's find like this one. Let's see if this one does it. Oh, no, I guess this graphic is being treated like an image as well. So I guess not every graphic has the ability to do colors. I thought graphics always had the ability to do colors because that's how I've always experienced them. But that's really the big difference, is that graphics, some graphics will allow you to change colors, but no photos will allow you to change colors. Now,
But you could use both, either or, to make them backgrounds, right?
totally.
So it doesn't matter what you choose. You can still click on those three dots and make it a background, right?
100%. Yeah. And then, right. So whatever works for you. So like, and then in that search, you can do things like textured paper background, and it'll give you things that are kind of already been within their database, kind of earmarked, saying like, this would look good as a background, because sometimes if you just do like paper, you kind of get this wild versions of paper, right? But in their search bar, if you typed in textured paper background, you're going to get a much different batch of results that are kind of more geared towards what would look good as a background.
Okay.
If you did bricks, you're going to get a whole mess of different cartoon bricks, real bricks, brick paper, brick not. If you did brick background, you're going to get basically essentially giant images of like brick walls. So that's why their search is like, you can use their search. You just kind of have to massage it a little bit, and like with anything, but then look after you do, like you search for bricks, let's say, then look underneath and it'll say like templates, backgrounds, image, then you can kind of narrow it down a little bit. And then what's nice is when you do that search for elements, whenever you click on elements, the next time it'll say recently used. So then it'll always show you, what you've been using, which is helpful. And then as you go, one thing that I don't know if people noticed was the magic, or I think they call it magic recommendations. Is that what they call it? Let me share again. I always forget because Magic Move is like a big Apple thing, so I always forget who has like trademark on magic stuff. But magic recommendations, right? So what happens is, as you're doing these things, so again, like the easiest one to sort of visually see is like if I do number, right? If I choose like, I don't know, let's do the number 3. And I put that in there. Sometimes, and let's say I do the number 4. Sometimes it'll give you a magic recommendation. Sometimes it won't. I haven't figured out why it doesn't. So like if I go back to number, because I've seen it happen with this. I've seen it happen where if I put this in, like this particular graphic set, the minute I use any one of these, it'll automatically give me magic recommendations of like the other numbers that look like that. So if you had just searched for like the number 1, and you're like, oh, I wonder if this has a full set, you would put that in and be like, oh yeah, there is a full set of them. I don't know why some of them, like now that one worked, right? I put that one in, you can see magic recommendations that gives me like similar sets. And I can see all the recommendations and see if that like all lines up with what I want. Now, obviously these are all different, but they're in a similar style. Like the 1, 2, 3, and then 4 over here are sort of the same. This 3 and this 2 are the same. So that's giving me sort of 2 styles of it. But the magic recommendations is a little bit of that AI that's sort of saying, hey, we're seeing that you're using this one thing. Do you want to use the similar sets? Again, everyone kind of these days thinks AI is like Chat GPT, where you just kind of go like, I want to make a thing, and it spits out a thing. Canva isn't quite like that. It's like helpful AI. It's like, we sort of assume you don't want your words blocked AI, so we're always going to make those at the top. It's, oh, I see you use these 3 things in a family, so I'm going to give you the rest of them in the family. Helpful, but then definitely you're still doing the work with this kind of stuff. So everyone good? Okay. Just want to make sure I'm not losing anyone. I know this is today. We're throwing a lot of sort of info at you. Now, one thing I will say as a slight aside, which is kind of fun with what you can do with this, is when you are looking at, let me get out of this. When you're looking at whether it be templates, video templates, anything, if I go to create a design, one of the things that this has is, they say things like education website, education video. If you logged in with your personal Gmail to Canva, it most likely wouldn't say educational. It would say like business or professional or something like that. The educational default is because we're an education account, right? So like if I come into like educational video and do a new one, you notice it's basically just done a search for educational video, but right below here it says corporate video. So I click corporate video, I'm suddenly going to get a much different batch of things. So that sort of educational stuff it's not really about that first word. It's really the second word. You're making a video, you're making a website. What it says here is just kind of, they assume we want an educational one. They're going to assume we want educational templates and things like that. But what is helpful is that for certain things like Google Classroom Header obviously works for Google Classroom, but it also works for Google Site. So if you wanted to make a header for your Google Site, you could do it in there. That's actually the proper size for that. Instagram posts, it does say square, and that is square. So if you wanted to make sure you have like a perfect square and you want it to be like a good image size, square is basically what it's doing, right? Don't do A4. A4 is what jacks up all the printers in the district because somebody doesn't realize that A4 is actually a slightly different size paper. And when they go to print it out, the printer is like, I need A4 paper. I don't have A4 paper, get A4 paper, and then nobody can print. I think Miss Latin knows what I'm talking about. That has happened to certain wings at Heathcote occasionally, not naming names. So yeah, there's one of the cool things you have though is Zoom virtual backgrounds, right? Now, we don't really use Zoom much anymore. I mean, I know we're using it for this, but like you can actually do a virtual background like with these things, right? You can create a template, you could put a logo on there, you can put different things on there. So for instance, I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to change. If you look at my virtual background right now is just a picture of my class. But if I choose, and let's see, I think I have them loaded. Yeah. So like this is a virtual background where I took the same picture, but then I added like the Heathcote Husky logo, our blue ribbon logo, and like our name and stuff. So I did this in Canva. Actually, wait, I gotta choose it. Did I choose it? Yeah, I chose it. Yeah, so like that's how you could do like a custom Zoom background. It's like the right size and stuff. That's also how you can add other elements. Sometimes you'll see people like, I know the name doesn't look good, that's why I don't use it, but it was sort of a proof of concept. I did this. What's also cool that you can do is related to this, which is kind of fun. It's a little bit of a thing is, that's distracting there. With these, what's cool is, I'm going to share my screen. This is like one of those little fun hacky sort of things, right? So let's say I wanted to not, I want to be in class, but I didn't necessarily want to be in class. So I'm going to record myself. And now when I'm looking at this, right, I can do the camera and the screen. Oh, I got to change the settings, but I'll do that later. Please hold. We'll cancel that for a second. Oh, I know. Now, this would just be me with this virtual background, right? So it would look weird that my virtual background is just a picture of me. However, what you can do, and it's not really a virtual background, but if you recorded yourself, let's say with something like QuickTime, where you just had a video of you just doing this, you could save that. You could bring that into Canva, put your background behind your head just going like this, save it as a GIF, and then upload it as your profile photo. And then your profile photo will be you just kind of blinking your eyes, and then you can actually have your video off, but have your, you know, but then it'll look like you're moving around. So I haven't done that per se, but it's possible. You know, it's just like take a screenshot of like this and then just use that as your screen, you know, as your profile photo. So there's different ways to have some fun. Not saying I've advocated those things, but like if we ever did go virtual as teachers, these are things to look out for. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if the person's like, you know, great Keanu Reeves movie Speed, where they loop the video and then like every like 2 seconds the purse jumps back up on the lap, kind of start catching an eye on these things. But those are fun sort of features. Let me get back into just some overview stuff and then we'll do some sharing. So that's that. Now, again, like a lot of these things are just going to be, you know, whether it's presentation, it's just a presentation. Educational is just, it's sort of the default templates that you're going to see. But really what you're looking for is that 16:9. That 16:9 is what, if you do a Google slideshow, that's what Google slideshow is default to. It's the same size. So those types of things. Classroom announcement, again, these are really just, it's what the default templates are going to be, but you don't have to use any of the default templates. You just think like you're going to use a presentation. That's it, presentation. It can be educational, it can be business, it can be whatever you want it to be. It's a 16:9 presentation. That's what you're making. When you do something like a presentation, looks very similar to a video and can function similar to a video. And I'll show you why in a second, because you can have your first slide and you just keep adding slides. You know, you can time yourself while you're doing it. Obviously, there's these, you know, you click these templates. If you wanted to add all 10 pages, you could apply all 10 pages. And it puts them all over there. You could obviously change the title and stuff. You could change the images, whatever you want. It's essentially a Google slideshow, right? You can present it and it'll be like, it'll present, it'll give you a little speaker notes on the side. But what's cool about these is you actually could do present and record. And then what it'll do is it'll actually kind of let you do a, you know, I'll choose this. Gives me a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then puts my head in the corner and gives me this. And then all I would essentially do is I would just toggle through and I could give my slideshow and I can give my presentation. So it's kind of like a cheap video. Like you could add animations and stuff, but then it's like, well, just go to the video because the video will be a little bit smoother. But you could record over. And then once you're done, you would end the recording. And it's going to upload it. Again, this is going to tell you to keep the browser window open. Longer it takes is really going to be based on, like, I'm in, you know, slow DSL. So this at school would theoretically happen in a flash. And then the recording link is ready. And then you can download. So what I'll do is I'll copy this real quick. I'll download it just for fun. Let's get a new tab. Let's take a look. And then and that's fine, you know, and it looks a little bit different than if you do the video will actually, like, you can actually have like your whole head. We'll have, I know Sandra did it where she was kind of aligned a little bit differently in her video when she shared hers with me. But so there's different ways to play around with this. And that's why Canva is nice, big rabbit hole to go down, but there are different ways to sort of approach it. And it's fine. You know, it's fine that if it ends up, once you download it, right? I downloaded it and I know you can't see, I'll show it to you in a second, but when I downloaded it, it downloads as an MP4 file. So it's a video file. So I just recorded over a slideshow, but then I can take that MP4 file and I can upload it to YouTube. I can use it as any standard video file. So may look a little bit different, may function a little different. The tools are a little bit different in the sense that, like, that's kind of timing you out. but when it actually finishes, it looks like, oops, that's the wrong one. This is, oh, mine hasn't finished downloading because my connection is super slow. I'll show it to you in a minute, but yeah, so there's different ways to do it, and looking at those, oops, there it goes. Now it's downloading.
So Chris, while you're doing that, while you're
Mhm.
waiting, I moved my head, not realizing I had, so that was
Okay.
not at all what I wanted.
Mhm. That's
And I
fine.
didn't realize it until I'd done the whole video. And then I was like, what? I had to do it again and again and again. And yeah, that was not fun.
And
But
that's fine. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm sorry that
I
you had to,
do.
right. But I'm saying that it's good that you did it here, and you kind of have the time to like experience that and like figure that out, so that when you're in that crunch of making stuff for class for your students, you're not in that same stuff, right? Like, I don't, I think that's a lot of big part of this class and what we were doing, especially being virtual and independent with those gaps in between, was really time for you to kind of be like, and then figure out what didn't frustrate you. Do you know what I'm saying? So that way, when it comes time to sort of do the real thing, not that you weren't doing real work, but like when you're like, all right, I got to bang out 5 of these things in an hour on my prep or whatever, then you'll be like, oh, I totally know how to do it. I know the workflow. I know what I want,
Mhm.
And a lot of times I'm a huge believer. And I've said it, I'm sure you've heard me say it, of like, sometimes you have to like drive into the brick wall to figure out how to use the brake. And sometimes the best way to kind of learn these things is to just epically screw up with them. And then that then makes the actual production time down the line that much smoother and more efficient and better looking. Because you're like, oh yeah, I totally spent 3 days on that thing. I jacked it up, but like, I'm really good now. Like, I know what not to do. I know like where my buttons are. I know. And I think that's hugely immensely valuable, is to, embrace the dumpster fire of what we do.
Yeah, I had a lot of those.
That's fine. Like that, like I'm telling you, like you've taken up my classes, Sandra, like, like I'm totally down with that. Like, that's for me, that's part of it. Like, that's what you need to do, because there's so much, right? There are so many features, there's so many options, there's so many things. And sometimes that visual overload, and sometimes you just got to press all the buttons to then figure out which buttons you really actually need to press and which ones you can kind of ignore and which ones don't really matter. And that's sort of my feeling, like with templates and things. Sometimes I can go down that rabbit hole of like, oh, this template, but I don't like that cloud there, but I'm gonna move this cloud. And like 4 hours later, you're like, what have I really done? Whereas I'm like, I kind of like to just base everything off that 8.5 by 11 or 11.5 or 11 by 8.5, if I'm going landscape, and just be like super simple, super clean, and have it be like useful. And that's what I really want. I mean, hopefully you guys are getting that out of this class, is that like just useful things to do. Do you know what I mean? Because that's kind of what I'm really sort of aiming for. Now I want to show you one other couple of things about how I use Canva interspersed with my sort of other work, right? So for instance, I had to create this. So I was doing I've done a couple of stat classes for new teachers on how to build their tenure portfolios. And part of that class, I just made a Google slideshow that I embedded in my blog and on my website, so teachers would have access to sort of this Google slideshow of directions, right, of resources from the class, whatever. A bunch of it was some bullet point stuff, a bunch of it was links to things. So totally Google slideshow wheelhouse, right? But I wanted to have sort of an example of a hierarchy of how a website might be built, or how you might organize your folders. And I'm sure we've all tried to use the shapes feature in Google, and it's like super easy and useful, but it literally looks like we used really bad, junky shapes to create these flow charts or whatever. So yeah, it works, but it looks like it's 1997, right? So what I did was, I knew I wanted to stay within the Google slideshow ecosystem for easy embedding in my Google site, for easy sharing with colleagues, for all that easiness, right? What I did was I opened up a slideshow in Canva, just a blank slideshow. So it's 16 by 9, so it's the exact same size. And then what I did was I created this graphic sort of outlining how one might structure their Google Drive. So these are all just folder icons that Canva had, which look much better than any shape I could possibly make in Google Drawing or Google Slides. Did my lines, a little Google Drive icon in the background, right? And then I said, all right, here's another way you can do it. You can kind of change it up. And I was like, all right, what goes in it? Made this. I did this all in Canva as a slideshow. But then I knew, and they have better arrows, better circles. It just looks better, right? So I had all these things, and then all I did was, once I had this looking good and I knew that this is what I wanted, and I just went to share and I downloaded all of these as PNG files. And then what happened is I had, what is it, seven image files that I then just tossed into my slideshow that I shared with teachers. So then they had sort of the benefit of both worlds, where it was a bit of a better graphic design. Another example similar to that is this. We're working on like technology curriculum continuum stuff. So similar, like I tried to do this with Google, like in a slideshow, like we're working on a slideshow presentation about it. I could have done this in Google Slides, but it wouldn't have looked as good because those shapes aren't as good. Like they're it looks like you made it in Google Slides with shapes or Google Drawing. So I was experimenting with doing it a couple of different ways in Canva, and I kind of liked how it looked in Canva better. But then I can actually download this and add it to the Google slideshow that I'm sharing. So just because Canva has the ability to do things like slideshows, it doesn't mean you're going to stop using Google Slides, right? Just because Canva has a video option, it doesn't mean you're not going to use iMovie or WeVideo or whatever, because sometimes those other ones are just easier, right? Like if middle school kids, they have iPads, they have iMovie. I would be like, don't go down the rabbit hole of Canva movie with 7th or 8th graders. If they are like been using iMovie for a while, like roll with that. Like that's a really great movie making platform, right? If you are working with kids, let's say like 5th graders, and they've been doing Google Slides forever, awesome. Stay in Google Slides, but maybe they use Canva presentations to create good looking graphics that they download to add to those Google Slides. Things like that. That's how you would kind of blend the apps together. Now, yes, you may use Canva to do like a infographic, or even if maybe students in the upper grades, middle school, high school, you did want to work with them on resumes if that was part of your curriculum, and maybe you would try to have like a really nice looking one that's not a generic sort of Google Drive version. You can do those one-offs in there, but mix and match these, like use the strengths of Canva and marry them with like the strengths of Google, right? So you want to embed stuff in your website and use Google Sites. Well, stuff that lives in Drive is the easiest, right? Stuff that's Google product is the easiest to embed. Make a Google slideshow, but create your visual elements, your visual artifacts, your visual media, create it in Canva so it looks good, and then just drop it into your slideshow. Now, speaking of embedding, you can, if you did want to use the full sort of feature of Canva, you can do things like embed. So you can get a view only link, right? Which is much like a publish to the web kind of link from Google Drive, where if you just want to send this to somebody, you can embed. And if you embed, you get the embed code. Now, this is where things get a little bit hinky, right? Like some services work better with embed code than others do. So for instance, Google Sites embed code feature doesn't work all that well, because Google Sites kind of just really wants you to use Google products and keep everything there. Every time I've tried to embed a non-Google product into Google Sites, it always kind of looks a little bit weird, or it doesn't quite line up. which is why I started just making my graphics in Canva to drop into my Google slideshow, because then I know it'll work really seamlessly for my students, for the parents, for whomever. So Canva does give you a lot of these options, but again, kind of like think about your personal workflow and how these things are going to marry, because you don't want to just go like, well, I'm going to go to Canva for everything. Yeah, but it might make part of your life more difficult than it needs to be. Does that make sense? And again, I'll show that because I know I went through that real quick, but I'll show that again and I'll go slower. So like when you go to share, we had talked about this earlier, and it's also in that video that I have about sharing. Like you can share to people, right? You can share to groups. You can change access, right? Anyone with the link, subscribe to the schools, much like Google. Embed would be where you would actually get this code, like HTML code, and then you could put that in. You know, probably works better in WordPress than it does in Google Sites. But you can copy those, and it is live. And what that means is if you were to update this, it will on that embed code automatically updates. The embed code is essentially a little window into this file, so you don't have to keep publishing it or anything. It will give you, like I've used present and record a lot today, which is why this is showing up here. But if it wasn't showing up and you wanted to have access to those other share options, that's down here under more. And under more, you get all sorts of different choices, right? You can create a QR code that links back to this. You know, you can turn this into a website, you know, things like that. You can share on socials channels if you wanted to. You'd have to connect these two, like you'd have to log in and sort of connect the accounts. Save it in different ways, save it directly to Drive. There's all sorts of things. There's all sorts of little rabbit holes you can go down. I haven't really talked about this a lot because, like, for the most part, we don't use this. For the most part, I think right now is sort of the basic course, the kind of entry. What you're really going to be doing is you're going to be presenting a recording if you wanted to record voiceover this to kind of make that movie. And then you're really then going to be downloading this as either an image to add to something, like an image to add to a Google slideshow, an image to add to a website, an image to print out to hang on the wall. And you can do JPEG or PNG. You're going to do a PDF if there's links in there that you want people to click, and you're going to use that PDF not to print, because obviously they can't click on a printed document, but you could email that PDF to people, and then they could open it up and they can actually click on links. If there's motion in it, whether you add elements, and one of the elements you add are videos. If you added videos to it, you could then, or if you added your own video to it, you recorded yourself. When you go to download, you could either download it as a movie or a GIF if it's just like a small little recurring thing. One thing that I don't know if people caught, but is that on the start of my videos for this course that are on YouTube, I basically just made this slideshow just with one slide, because it's 16:9 is the same as the video size. And what I did was they had an animated Canva logo. So I just kind of put a background on, I got some text, and then when I downloaded this, I just did the download as, and I did the GIF, and then that's what I put into the start of those videos that I posted to YouTube. So essentially you could turn very simple things, and this is where you would leverage it and sort of say, all right, you know, I'm going to use iMovie to make my video, but I want to make a cool little intro. And I'm going to use Canva to make a little animated GIF intro for my iMovie video, or you make a really nice visual for your Google slideshow, or you make a really nice header for your Google site in Canva. And that's kind of where you blend all these things and marry them together. Okay, so before we do some more sharing of those videos and answer final questions, we'll talk about how you submit this, your project for this class. So essentially, we talked about, there's a video on the playlist that talks about sharing and how you can download these things. One of the things I recommend, and I really think is the best, since A, there's Scarsdale, B, there's Edgemont, and C, Canva's not super great about like having the movie in an easy to find place. It's that link. Everything is kind of hodgepodgey with Canva right now, or just as they build sort of their system. So I recommend downloading everything, sticking everything in Drive. So just as a quick reference point, like I made just a folder in Drive for myself, and I downloaded all of those things out of my Canva folder, including the movie, right? That's that movie that I did. And then again, when I'm in that movie, you go to share, present, recording, you'll see it. You click download, it'll download. Once it's here, this is essentially the thing you're going to share. So you would do share, you'd share it with me, you'd share it with STI at scarsdaleschools.org. And then once that's done, you can also copy that link. And if you forget to, you just click copy link once you've done it. Then what will happen is I'm going to email everyone at the end of this link. This is the link where you sort of submit these things. So you would fill out your email. You could always watch this little video right here if you wanted to, but I'm essentially walking you through it. Title of your project, could just be, Canva 6010 work. Click next. You can watch this video if you want. It's an STI project. Grade level would be whatever, like Vicky, you could do NA because not applicable, because you're school secretary. I mean, you could do K1 to 2, 4, 5, whatever, right? You choose whatever grades you work with. Subjects obviously would be whatever, right? Math subject, I might do technology. I mean, obviously some of you standard world language, things like that, right? Choose whatever, or choose tech. Your description for this is kind of just however you want to describe it. So essentially, your project, concise description is just like, this is the work I've done during this class. You could go into more detail that if you want, sort of how we've created a bunch of things. I don't even mind if you say like, this is just a whole bunch of messy pieces that I created while I was learning how to use the program, work, made for during the course to learn the platform. Don't worry about hashtags. You don't need those. I mean, that's just for searchable purposes. You can go through your standards if you want to do, if there's particular standards, the course number, 6010. Let's see if hopefully it's in here, 5924, 34. Oh, look at that. It's not even in here. Oops. Oh, and it won't even let me choose. All right. Well, I wonder if there is an other one. Let's see.
It usually shows up like after the course ends, like the next day.
Oh,
so
does
since
it?
It's until like tonight, it's not going to show up probably till tomorrow morning.
Which is weird because 6011 is my Google Slides class that I'm teaching in August. So that's a little bit weird. But yeah, so maybe check back tomorrow then, I guess. But you would choose the 6010. And as a slight plug, Google Slides is in person at Heathcote in August. Anyone wants to take it, we still need a couple of people to register. I'm going to send out one of those emails. It's going to be more about how you could use it for different purposes, not just like bullet points, sort of death by PowerPoint type vibe. But let's pretend this was the 6010 one. Another reason, no. Click next. You can always watch that attachment video, but essentially what we're going to do is you're just going to put the Google Drive folder link. So what that is when you come over here and you basically copy this link, oops, you would put that in there. And the description could almost be the same as what you had before, which is this is a collection of things I've learned, whatever, things I've worked on, whatever. And then that's it. These are all optional. These would be like if Canva was a little bit better about sharing like the videos, you could put like the example link would be like to the folder, or this example link would be like if you wanted somebody to look at it and watch it on Canva, and you're welcome to, like if you wanted to put the example of the video using that copy video link, you could put that in here if you wanted to. You know, if you had posted any of these videos you've created for this class to YouTube, you could totally put the YouTube link in. But essentially, really all that matters is you take everything you've made, whether it's finished, doesn't matter. Finished, perfect, not perfect, a mess, I don't care. Sandra, you said you had a bunch of different versions. Stick them all in Drive. Totally fine. I think it's just good to be able to see like all the different sort of ways people have worked through things. Click next. And then if you're willing to share, yes or no, whatever, up to you. Click next. And then you would click submit. And it would go through, and then that's how you would submit this. So this video will hopefully be up later, tomorrow morning maybe, so you can always review that. But essentially just follow that. I'm going to email everyone the link to that. So check it. I'll touch base with Fran and Anne-Marie to figure out why this class isn't in the drop down. So you can fill it out. Obviously, no rush. Yeah, and I'll email the link to all the YouTube videos again as well. If you are interested in that, the STI, the Google Slides one, just a 1 credit. It's going to just over like a couple of days, quick. And we talk about how you use them for TED Talks, how you use them for tutorials, how you can use them for all sorts of different things. We've used Google Slides with like as young as 2nd grade, making super basic like state presentation type books. We've done graphic novels with them, all the way up to sort of standard bullet point things. We've done also like automated Ignite style presentations where the slides auto advance every 15 seconds and the students speak to them. So it's sort of kind of going beyond just slides as bullet point driven things and more to like, hey, here's a whole bunch of different ways you could use it across the grade levels. So super rad if you showed up for that. But yeah, so I will send out that email with a link to that survey, that project database submission thing. I will send a reminder link to all the YouTube videos, and I will also email Fred and Anne-Marie and the STI to make sure that 6010 is added to that project database. Once you've submitted the stuff to the project database, then you can do the activity evaluation form. And obviously, or maybe not, just say it, the YouTube videos will be there forever, so you can always refer back to these. I'll get this one uploaded as soon as possible based on my connection. Those how-tos about sharing and recap and stuff, those are going to stay up there. So you're always welcome to refer back to them. You're always welcome to email me, follow up anytime, whatever. All right, so we got a few minutes. So let's take a look at some of those videos created. Anyone want to jump in and volunteer? No.
I can do it.
All right, good. Yeah, go ahead, Trisha.
Hi. So I thought I did it right. I really enjoyed playing with it, like you said. Let me see if I can find my stuff. Can you see this, or do I need to screen share?
You use screen share, and
Okay.
then basically, try to just choose it. If you don't know, if you're, just choose like Google Chrome so we can see all your tabs, or worst case, share your desktop. Then that will be able to see everything.
There you go. I didn't know if you were controlling it or I was controlling
No,
it.
you're controlling. Yeah.
I did 2 of them. The first one I spent a really long time doing because I couldn't get the voiceover at the same time. And the second one I got a little frustrated with, and I found, oh, see, where'd it go? Oh, no, that's not it. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
The second one, I found my 11-year-old and he was like, Mom, you just drag and drop, and it just dropped in. So I don't know how that happened, but, here, hold on. Sorry. I guess my connection is. So it's under projects.
Oh.
And then it's 610. So this is the first one I did, and I had to match my voice with the timing. So I don't know if I did it right, like you said. Is this the right format that you asked for? Is this a video, or is that
this the other
video? Okay. So I just hit this, I guess, right?
Yep. So hit play and watch what happens.
The Passions with a Purpose project will cultivate your.
Oh, sorry.
Imagine how much happiness we could spread if we shared something we loved.
pursuing a unique passion or hobby can motivate you. What is something that you are passionate about? Is it dance or reading or painting or maybe a sport like soccer? I am passionate about going to the beach. I enjoy playing in the ocean and building sandcastles with my family. We recognize that many students are just beginning to develop their passions and look forward to continuing our role as educators and supporting their natural interests. So, 7th grade Popham does like a passion project where the kids, instead of having homework one night a week, they have to work on their passions. This was a new project, I guess they brought back after COVID this year. So it was new to me. And one of my students did boxing and then they did a presentation on it. So I thought this would be like a cool way to introduce it. And I really enjoyed Canva. I just didn't know if I did it right because I had a lot of trouble timing the slides with the voiceover. So I had to go back into like each slide and then edit the time up here to the seconds that followed my voice. So I wasn't sure if I did it right.
Well, so there's multiple ways to do it, and that's where Canva is a little bit tricky, and that was why I said try to make a couple of videos to sort of see the different ways. I find the present and record to be a little bit easier because then you can kind of advance, and as you're going through, it kind of makes it a little bit easier for you to kind of turn the page, so to speak. Plus, what I like from the present and record standpoint is we get that little your head in it.
I don't want my face in it.
Yeah, I get that, but like sometimes it's helpful for kids, right? So that they can actually see like who's talking, you know. So there's different ways to do it, and one's not right or the other. It's just right. You run into trouble, and that hopefully will help you think about like, all right, like I got to kind of script myself out. I got to time myself, and then that could also be something like we do with students, whereas we say to them, we have them write scripts when we do things, and we make them time it out, and we're like, you can't talk for more than let's say 10 seconds. So we basically, it's literally just like a Google Doc table, and they break whatever their narrative is up into these like little sections in the table, and they time themselves and figure out, can I say this in the 10 seconds? So then that helps them to like practice enunciation. It helps them to practice just the flow of it. It helps them to kind of almost edit and revise, because then it's like they trip over words and go, oh, I gotta reword that so it's a little smoother. And that's also helpful sort of in that process.
Yeah, and writing. Thank you for sharing.
Totally. Yeah. Like I said, I'm super down with like screwing stuff up to figure out how not to screw it up in the future. All right, who's up? Who wants to go?
I'll go. So like you said, you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your achievements. And I think that was kind of what was happening with me. I recorded it a couple of times, and the recording was one place, and then but I redid it a bunch of times, and here it is. It is what it is.
So this is one of the
but you can't hear it.
So this is one of those versions where I don't know why Canva has some set up in some places. This is where Canva is a little bit weird. This is where what you do is you go to share, and you go to the present and record. And then if you were to, for the purposes of like turning it in today, you would download it and then drag it to that drive folder. For the purposes of just sharing it, you can click copy on that link and then open up a new tab.
Oh.
This is one of those just kind of funky things about Canva where like, it's almost like they're trying to like marry too many features together.
Okay, so it should
now hit the play button. Yeah, hit that big play button.
Hey students, it's important to have a organized backpack with all your school books and your supplies. You have to have a system that you will use every day to keep yourself organized. Otherwise, you're going to end up like this, not knowing where those papers are and that you have to turn in or you need to study for a test. You do not want to end up like this. This can only cause a great deal of frustration and disorganization, but instead, I have a few simple steps that you can follow. First, You have to have a backpack that has a number of different compartments. And it is important to assign each compartment to a particular supply. For instance, you
You don't need to hear the rest of that.
No, that's all good.
you have to have a
And that's great too, actually, because you could take that and when you download it, like that would be something where I'm a huge advocate of teachers all having their own YouTube channels, because YouTube is like that's what it's designed for. It's designed for streaming video, right? So it's just easy and you can organize things. We all have access to create our own YouTube channels through our Scarzell account. You could give that to kids, certainly, but like I'd send that to the parents too. Like I think that's great to even get the parents to think about like, oh yeah, like I should get about, like I think that's something that would be a great way to kind of help the parents connect to what like is being taught about in the class. I think that was great. And then YouTube is awesome too, because like you can post things on YouTube and make them unlisted on YouTube. So if you search YouTube, you won't find them, but it makes it then very easy to embed those videos in your Google site. Or if you send a link to that video, that YouTube link, someone will be able to play it because it's not like private, it's just like hidden. So as long as they click on the link, they can see it. No, I thought it was great, Joan.
So I still don't understand why it wouldn't play for you, but it
does.
why?
Like I think it's like I think Trisha based it off a template that had like pre-recorded audio that she was replacing. For some reason, like it's not that it wouldn't play for us. You just had to get that copy link, that you just had to get that like final product link.
Okay.
And that's why I said like Canva's a little bit weird. It's kind of like it's because they allow sort of any file to be presented, recorded on. So it's like any file can become a movie, but movies are sort of movies that are different than. It's almost like they're trying to do so much all at once that sometimes things get a little bit muddled, which is why we're going to download all this and save it to a Google Drive folder, because then at least it's clean sharing. But it's also good for us to say like, all right, this is weird. Like maybe you don't need to make a true video. Maybe you just present and narrate over a slideshow, and then you can auto advance whenever you want to auto advance, right? That may turn out to be something that is easy, right?
I didn't like the camera on me, so
Right.
I put in
Camera off.
a still shot of myself.
And that's fine. And again, it's because I want you guys to see these different features and see what's sort of out there, and to then know that like when you're going to do this for your kids or for your parents or for whatever, you kind of have a sense of like, oh, I got to remember, I want to turn this off. I got to remember, I want to do this. I want to remember, I got to do that. Because yeah, that's what this is all about, being a little bit messy. So we got time for one or two more.
I could go next.
Yeah, go for it.
I made 2 like really short videos. I didn't end up putting myself in them because it felt like sticking a fork in my eye, but I did put music. So I think that I should be able to. Can you see the video?
Yep.
Okay.
And I could tell there's music there. It's just sometimes when you're screen sharing with the video, sometimes the audio gets. It popped through a little bit, and like, but that just happens sometimes on Zoom with like your network connection may not be able to handle 2 sets of audio being streamed simultaneously.
Yeah, it's not great. Well, and then here's the other one. It's like a sample project. So I have my kids do like a roller coaster design.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's just like a bunch of computations and stuff.
Totally. And that's a great example too of how you could share that with the kids through that like assignment, and basically just tell them you can literally use my template. You just got to change all the numbers. Like what would yours look like? So yeah, that's a great, or you could have them create it from scratch and use yours sort of as the exemplar of the mentor text. So depending on the age level or the competence of the students in terms of how comfortable they may be creating, that's what's cool about Canva is you can literally have them just change the numbers and the graphics for their own, or they can create a whole new one from scratch and just, you know, do their own design. Awesome. So since it is 8 o'clock and the Frontline did tell us that we were only going 8 o'clock, we will cap it here. Like I said, the sharing thing is on YouTube. I'm happy to stick around for the next hour to answer questions, do anything like that as needed. I will email out the link to YouTube videos, to the STI thing, and hopefully the 6010 will be in that drop down by tomorrow. Hopefully this will be uploaded by tomorrow as well, since I seem to have been able to borrow somebody's stronger Wi-Fi than my own. But that's it for now. Hopefully this was valuable and hopefully everyone, you know, found good use of their time out of this.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.